Okay, so guys, I guess that's our cue to start our conversation. So perhaps first I give my good friends and panelists, Eddy and Justin, a chance to introduce yourself. So whichever you prefer to go first.
Okay, I go first. I'm Eddy Chan. I work for Parker Lord Corporation, specifically responsible for Asia Pacific region. What I do, I deliver IT solutions for the whole region of different countries in the APAC region, whether it's application system or infrastructure. So I'm based out of Hong Kong. My team is scattered all around in APAC, people in Shanghai, Japan, India.
Thanks a lot, Eddy. And Justin?
Yep. Okay, thanks everyone for joining the call. My name is Justin. I'm based out from Singapore and I'm from SAP. I've actually been working on the B1 solution for the last 8 years. Across all the different roles, I've been with SAP for 5 years. And my main role is really in transformation and in strategic initiatives as part of what we term as the Channel Sales Management ERP portfolio. Right, so my passion is in helping companies like yourselves discover how SAP solutions can help you run better, and to identify and to come up with some of the interesting things that you may not know about SAP solutions. Yeah.
Okay, and last and perhaps least, myself. My name is Olli. I work as the regional director for B1 Solutions, managing the Asia region, looking after our 8 legal entities within APAC, as well as several other offshore consultants in other locations. And of course, with this role, I work more towards the business development side together with Justin and his colleagues from SAP. And in terms of the account management, consulting services, of course, we work closely with Eddy. We are practically neighbors, both of us stationed here in Hong Kong. And now due to the pandemic, we haven't been able to meet as often as we used to, but nevertheless, we keep our communication open and ensure that Lord has all the tools needed to run their business effectively. So I guess that was the short and sweet introduction of everyone. So we can go to the discussion itself. And I think the best part actually to start is kind of from the top. And perhaps, Justin, you could, there are several ERP solutions in SAP's portfolio. So what is the SAP strategy, and specifically strategy when it comes to a 2-tier ERP architecture? How SAP envisions it, and of course, how we are collaborating with you guys?
Yeah, so thanks Olli, thanks for the question. Right, like what Olli rightly pointed out, within the SAP family, we do have multiple types of ERP, and they do cater to different sizes. Right, so I'm very sure that majority of the attendees will know our ECC solution, our S4HANA solution, but we also do have other smaller solutions such as Business One that plays a very important role in this entire 2-tier ERP. Right, and the reason why we do have these other solutions, of course, to work hand in hand with our larger solution stack, is that we believe that no company is the same in terms of their requirement and in terms of their complexity. Right? And as a result, we recognize that some of the subsidiaries may not require as many features. They may not require as much as some of the other parts of the organization. And that's where we come up with this particular stack. Right? So the way that we envision 2-tier ERP is really to have somewhat of a template-based approach in all of the smaller subsidiaries where all of them are running the same solution. And this gives 3 important benefits. Right? One of it is that in terms of the time to roll out, by having somewhat of a templated-based approach, it makes it easier to roll out one after the other. And given that the solutions are largely similar and on a simpler licensing model compared to the S4 stack, that's where there is cost savings as well. And of course, in terms of the complexity of the solution, right? In certain areas where the subsidiaries are smaller, in certain areas where the operations are not as complex, That's where we have a easier to use solution that can meet the requirements and meet the sophistication of the users in those areas. Right? So that's really the entire strategy. For the smaller solution to work hand in hand with the bigger solutions to achieve the right business outcomes.
And Justin, I actually have a few perhaps points or clarifying questions. So in order to enable such a two-tier architecture, you guys actually have your own middleware to manage these integrations and manage this alignment, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So we do have our own middleware, but a very key component of the two-tier story, I would say, is also in terms of the partners, right? So we do recognize that from a solution standpoint, we do have what it takes for this two-tier architecture to be developed, but at the same time, choosing the right partner is very important, right? So depending, of course, on your industry, depending, of course, on your geographical coverage, this is where partners like B1 Solutions play an extremely important role in how we can roll out and how we can support our end customers, right? So that to me is one of the key parts beyond the solution, but also the ecosystem that we have in place.
Perfect. Thanks a lot for that. That, Justin, I think it's clear that SAP is looking for this two-tier as one of the key strategies. And of course, this will allow more organizations to benefit SAP's solutions, not only those huge, large enterprises. So Eddy, in case of Lord, you actually chose a two-tier ERP architecture, whereby your headquarters and bigger manufacturing sites are running ECC, whereas I'd say around 20 legal entities globally, out of which 11 being located in Asia are actually running SAP Business One. So could you share a bit more what made you to reach this decision and what are the benefits that you've gained of this approach?
Thank you. Just as simple as you described, for the region that I manage, I have 10 entities to manage, different SBOs to manage. So consistency is very important. So having one piece of code that works for all countries, easily deployed and easily managed is very important. And also, as you mentioned, that in our other groups and divisions, they use ECC, and having a line master data management is very important. Meaning, all the master data, whether it's inventory, item, vendor, or customer, we all created upstream in the ECC and have them flow down to our SBO in the region, and to not only to APAC but also to EMEA region. And then we fill in the shells of all this master data information with more details specific to the countries. So that's a very important for us for reporting and managing our not only inventory but global customer base as well as vendor base as well. You know, having a consistent template, if you will, we not only benefit from managing our 10 different entities, but from a corporate perspective, we easily can share and be able to, to be able to synergize all our work between region, between APAC and EMEA. A lot of things that we trade for a single piece of code that can be used here and can be also applied to Germany as well and France. So that is why we think having this two-tier architecture for our size of the operation right now has yielded the maximum benefits from what we invested in. I can speak more to that too later with you regarding other compliance piece.
Yeah, I mean, in fact, I wouldn't want to go too much in the compliance, but I understand that in terms of master data specifically, this is not only due to the efficiency, whereby you are actually keying in the master data only once, but there is also some governance and due diligence reasons behind, right? So in your corporate policies and procedures, there is actually a vetting process for suppliers and customers, right?
Correct. That's absolutely correct. So actually, in fact, since you mentioned, we in fact not allowed to create our own masters in different countries. So the customer code and the vendor code is consistent globally for the load operations.
And in terms of this having, you know, all the codes aligned, what kind of benefits do you see that this will provide to load? I mean, of course, there is a variety and huge amount of benefits of being aligned. But for example, in terms of reporting, I think there is some significant benefits of having this aligned coding, aligned structure in general.
Absolutely. I mean, it's very simple that we do provide daily, weekly, and monthly extracts of our data from China, from Japan, from Germany, from France, from UK, of the load operations, feeding that to EDW in load, and then we feed that to the mothership Parker data mart, so that you can imagine, you know, we're talking about Camlock in one of our products, Camlock 205 with that item code. It's consistent globally. So the management will know how much we sell for that particular product globally ourselves. So simple as that. So other strategic reason would be vendor. I guess I don't need to tell you that, you know, once you know you have a consistent vendor master with a vendor code, then you know how much we buy from them, and then you basically can work out your procurement program to have the strategic supplier, whether you can bargain better rates with them or not. And for customer, and then if you know globally where you're selling to, in which country, and how much they sell for the same company or for the same customer, then you know how much you doing business with them, and be able to, you know, do your business planning according to who are the top 10% of the customers base that customers that you're selling to, and be able to come up with different sales and marketing program, or making better deals, or even plan your product better with those people, and then you can invest more people and resources with those strategic customers, and come up with the better business plan for the next 3, 4, 5 years to come. And that's how I see the consistency of this master information.
And Eddy, perhaps let's dig a little bit deeper on this particular topic, because it's very interesting, I'm sure, for many. So you mentioned that your systems are feeding the BI. You mentioned that ECC is feeding your SBOs globally. And of course, understanding the corporate rules and regulations is important. And there are also changes, I believe, rather often. So how are you able to meet these ever-changing requirements of the corporate and meet them on a timely manner? Has it something to do with common operations throughout your organization? Is there a template that you are using for all of your sites, the implementation? How do you make sure that actually if the corporate requires something to do within next 2 weeks that you can actually do it because you are managing 10, 11 different companies?
Yeah, so what I was talking about is the business fundamentals of why they are what's the benefit and why they're consistent. Now, then how we kind of put that in practice will be what you just mentioned, the global template. And the global template would be what we operate on from different countries on the same template. And then we only provide very, very little wiggle room for those countries that must be having those little wiggle spaces for the local legal reasons or governmental statutory reasons. But that's our template to follow. And now having that template to follow, I hope I'm not repeating myself. Those are a lot of things that when we make a change in one particular country, then we can apply that same piece of code to a different countries and have them. So, for example, I speak a little bit of compliance. Now, if you ask me, what is it important? Because we are eventually, or indeed, a U.S. company, and then a U.S. listed company. So some of your colleagues here in the audience here, probably you know that when you're listed in the U.S. market, you have to do a lot of SOX compliance, SOX controls, 1.1, 2.1, 3.1, etc. Talks about user access, talks about backups, talk about terminated users, and move reports. That's the change that you make in the system and how you prove it, who does it, and all that. So if I have variation of that, if I don't make it consistent, it'll be a nightmare for a size of a team that I manage to provide that kind of service to the whole region. So with that, coming back to this, having the global template, and that will help me to also provide my governance, control, management to the system that I provide. So speaking of the recent audit in China, recent audit in India, there's a finding that we need to implement something in China, but in fact, I know that for the rest of the 9 entities will be from the same finding for the same remediation that I put in place. So I take that out and apply that to all 9. And in fact, the internal audit will go to them eventually. It just started with China. So now we just had finished India and apply the same to India, and it's this upcoming month in April we'll have audit in Hong Kong as well as in Japan, and I'll be repeating the same tool or my trick the same place again and again, which is makes it easier for all of us.
Yeah, I mean, Eddy, this is more of a statement than a question, but obviously what you are doing is, first of all, correct. So, having global template that's more or less one fit for all, of course, taking into consideration the local rules and regulations, but that gives you a well-governed solution. It also gives you an easy adaptation to changes. And frankly speaking, it gives you a very cost-effective way of doing things, because instead of doing things 10 times, you do thing once, and then you just copy-paste it to others. And this is not only in Asia, but also EMEA, also Brazil. So it's I feel that's very admirable way of actually managing the process. So I'm going a bit towards us, but without talking of B1 solutions per se, what is important for you? I mean, you have your internal IT team, but of course you still need experts supporting your IT environment. So what is important for you when you're actually choosing a partner to work with?
Well, Upfront, I think the global presence will be very beneficial and important to us. I have 10 entities, in fact, 7 countries/locations with different language, with different local insights of business. So having a regional presence like you, Olli, providing me service would be very handy for us. Now, not only let's expand that picture. It's not only regional, but now we're talking about global. As I mentioned, we have EMEA operation as well. So the synergy that we have internally between my region and the EMEA region is already a huge benefit there. Now, knowing B1 Solutions not only regional in APAC, but also global, covering US and in EMEA, I think this is something, having a global partnership with the same set of skill set from the same experts, knowing what we are doing, covering all of us in the global space, I think will be very important. You know, the language, the time zone. You probably know that a couple of scripts, or more than a couple of scripts that we benefit from the creation of that in EMEA, and vice versa. So, you know, I think that's very, very important, not for us, but for some other companies like I'm in.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's also, again, cost effective, because at the end of the day, you are only talking to one person when it's a global entity, whereby that one person is then coordinating all of your needs. Eddy, I'm kind of putting you here in the pedestal, and if you don't have the answer, that's entirely fine. But considering everything you've said, having centralized master data, having centralized real-time reporting, do you have any idea that how much benefit this has actually brought to Lord or to Parker Lord in terms of figures or in terms of anything else? I mean, it must be super important that you know today that I sold Chemlock 205 globally this month, and you know today that now I need Chemlock 205, let's say in Malaysia this month. So there must be some benefit, but I wonder if this is something that has been analyzed yet.
Yeah, I'm sure it's being analyzed. I'm definitely sure. I just don't have that quantifiable figure ready for me to be able to share with you now here, because we feed the data on a daily basis. So when a corporate don't receive that information from this region, our team is the first one to be alerted. So I'm sorry, I don't have that figure with me on hand in terms of, you know, what if we don't have this, what's the benefit? In fact, I don't think I have the time luxury to compare what I have today and not supposed to have B1, and then what the picture will be, and that would be a little bit hard to justify it.
Sure, and understand entirely. So Justin, I'm now actually interested, since we talked a bit about Lord, which is of course a global organization that requires a global support, as well as of course a bit of B1 Solutions being a global, but more importantly of an importance of having a global company supporting large enterprises. So perhaps let's look at it the other way around. So how does SAP support B1 Solutions, and SAP of course support other global partners, and how this collaboration actually works?
Yep. So thanks, Olli. Thanks for the question. Right. In a nutshell, there is a couple of ways that we support our customers and partners. First thing is that both B1 Solutions and Lord Corporation, of course, you are global organizations. Your companies, your businesses run basically 24/7, right? And from our side, this is where we recognize the importance of support as well. And that is why within all the different market units, there will be solution experts which are capable of supporting you and ensuring that between B1 Solutions and Lord Corporation, you have the necessary support to get your projects live, and of course to manage any critical issues that surface, right? And to us, at the very baseline of it, we believe in delivering a quality product to the end customer that our partners trust in deploying. And this includes, for example, all the basic building blocks for IFRS compliance, for GAAP compliance, all the relevant security tests, as well as penetration tests, and of course, the tools to help, of course, Eddy with his SOX compliance and all the rest of the relevant items, right? So we take a lot of pride in the products that we develop, and we take a lot of pride in whatever that we ship out to market. Right? And this actually leads me to another point. Two-tier strategy is one of the key strategies for SAP. Right? We believe in providing our large customers with simpler, more nimble, easier to use solution in the subsidiaries, and we back that up. Eddy was talking quite a bit about master data integration, about vendor integration. Some of these scenarios are actually created by SAP and supported by SAP, and we recognize that this being a key part of our business is something that we'll continue to enhance over time. Right? And of course, we also pay attention to what is going on globally. In the event that there are new security risks, right, you can rest assured that there will be hot fixes released by SAP such that you are fully compliant, your solution is fully safe, and that our customers and our partners have the best care from us to ensure that your solutions are always up to date and always capable of taking on new security threats and new business challenges. Right? So from us, it is really about putting together that building block system such that the partners can leverage on it to better support our customers.
Sure, sounds good, Justin. And in fact, this security thing you brought up is a very good point. It's also very timely. We've just gone through the Log4j not too long ago. And this actually brings me to another question to Eddy, which is important in this sort of two-tier ERP approach, as well as the templatized approach. So Eddy, you mentioned, again, there are 10 to 11 different databases in APAC. There is probably 5 in EMEA. There is 1 in Brazil. So how do you maintain your data? As in, is it in a centralized location? Could you share us a bit more how the IT infrastructure supporting this ERP environment is actually set? Eddy, sorry, you are mute.
I was talking to myself, sorry. We have this production live servers in our hyperconvergence solution, Nutanix in Hong Kong. Parker data center, it's a formal data center. So it's a hyper virtual convergence solutions, that what they call. And then we do have another set of Nutanix in Japan as well as Shanghai. Speaking of that, I want to kind of extend this compliance story a little bit. Is that the compliance basically you try to protect your company, whether it's from a cybersecurity attack or a virus going on in the line. So basically, you just want to safeguard your environment. And with this two-tier, rather straightforward and simple architecture, I'm able to mimic and duplicate my environment in my other hyperconvergence solutions quickly. So on a daily basis, we feed delta data from the production to another Loginex environment in Japan. And any time and point, I can stand up a live production environment in Japan within end-to-end, within, we just tested back in June 2021. We started the DR testing from 8 o'clock in the morning and we completed at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. That means at any time we are hit or somehow the disaster happened in Hong Kong, we will be able to stand up an environment in a different location, and in fact, it's a different country within what, 7 hours? Actually, 6 hours. 8 to 2, yeah, 6 hours. You know, that's long, that's half a day, but if you think about it, I'm talking about end-to-end, meaning a whole production environment. So people can continue to place their order, do the shipment, enter their journal vouchers, entries, you know, doing the APAR, and then wait, we cover the original physical location in Hong Kong. And then, you know, it's our choice whether we want to bring it back to Hong Kong or we let it stay in another country for operation until, you know, the primary location is stable or solid. So that, speaking of that, I hope I'm answering your question regarding nowadays, how do we safeguard our from security threats in the market?
Yeah, Eddie, so just to recap what you just now said. So basically the idea is you have the entire APAC in Parker data center in Hong Kong. So all the databases are actually in the centralized location, which I would assume the location is of course in Lord's own network, which covers pretty much the whole APAC area. And in Japan, as well as in China, you have disaster recovery sites, which the data is replicating. I believe the logs are actually replicated in some hours, whereas the whole databases are replicated on a daily basis. And if an environment in Hong Kong is impacted with, let's say, half a day, you can actually be fully up and running using the Japan locations, including all the 10 to 11 sites, right?
Absolutely, that's correct. There are other additional insurance, I would say, coverage that I did not mention, is that the Hong Kong data center itself, our corporation have the whole backup of the whole data center on a daily or not hourly basis. So we actually have 4 or 5 copies of the of our production, the whole production that I have in Hong Kong. And in fact, if the 2-tier architecture is simple enough, then we have the luxury to be able to have this kind of planning or this kind of arrangement.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely quite impressive. So perhaps to recap a bit from the beginning, what we've discussed. So first of all, SAP is strategically, of course, supporting this 2-tier ERP architecture. We could call it 80-20 kind of strategy, which also is well known for many other businesses. And of course, I'm working closely with Justin due to this global presence of several clients. And SAP is putting a huge emphasis on having a stable, high-end solution for smaller subsidiaries also, and of course ensuring the security. Like once Log4j happened, I think it took less than a day that there was actually a version that would mitigate this issue. And with this support, companies like Lord, who we have Eddie here, are actually able to take an advantage of this cost-effective model of having a 2-tier ERP architecture. whereby the bigger manufacturing sites are running ECC, and the headquarter, of course, running ECC. And the smaller sites, the subsidiaries, are running SAP Business One, which is running within their own centralized locations. That's within the same network. And of course, having this disaster recovery in place, which Eddy mentioned. All of the sites, as far as I understand, are actually implemented using the same fixed template. And the reason for this template is rather simple. I mean, first of all, that's a cost-effective option in terms of implementing new sites. It's already there, so it's just doing what has been done before, and it's proven to work. It also ensures you guys to quickly adapt to changes, which in today's corporate world, let's face it, they happen, if not daily, probably weekly basis. So it's kind of like, instead of applying something 11 times, applying something one time, and that's done. And of course, the other important point here is to having a global partner who can support you with the several different time zones, with local languages, and etc. Did I forget something of my recap?
Yep, I think from my side, it's spot on. Of course, I just wanted to highlight, right, choosing the right partner is extremely important. Business One is one of the solutions that is interesting from a SAP standpoint, because we sell 100% indirectly through partners, right? So meaning that if today you are looking to go out there and get a solution like this, you actually need to have it and to actually consume it through a partner. Right, so this is one of the interesting things about the product. And of course, we believe that we have got the right ecosystem to enable our end customers to really enjoy this 2-tier architecture benefit.
Perfect. Thanks for that, Justin. Lucille, is there any questions at this point?
We do have one question. How do templates help with compliance, seeing as different countries have different requirements?
I guess that's the question for me. So how do templates help with the compliance? Well, imagine if your internal audit comes to your regions or countries, and provided that you are managing more than one country, like I do for the operations. So the audit will, if you know how they do, they will look at the evidence, they'll look at the same place. They're not necessarily be hard to deal with, but you have to understand that it's their job to make us, or make the operation more solid, proven, so that when you are a listed company, or when the external audit comes to you, you will be better prepared. So the internal audit will look at the same place, and if you don't have the template consistent, so you will have variations of results from different audits from different countries. Now, if you are only the manager for one country, yeah, sure, then you only do it one time. But you must have, although it may not be your role to manage multiple countries, but you should have a superior leadership that manage the region. And at that level, would they want different turns, or a variation of remediation effort that you need to put in that can stop your or slow down your other value add projects, right? So having these templates will definitely put in a consistent process or consistent evidence and documentations for compliance. And speaking of which, the SOX audits, as I mentioned, to talk about user access control, change controls, other controls like backup physical access to the servers and all that. So if you have the same template, same way of doing things, it will You don't have to you still have to do 10 times, but you still do the 10 times of the same thing, but you don't need to do 10 variations, 10 different, right? So that's the point.
Eddy, perhaps if you don't mind, I will add a bit to this answer. So I think when we talk about compliance, we talk about three different things. We talk about the local compliance, which is the country specific. We talk about global compliance, which is the headquarter specific. And we talk about internal compliance, which is slightly different than the headquarter specific, because we are talking about internal, not external. So where the template helps the most is the latter two. So first of all, in terms of, if we talk about internal compliance, you could have, well, not you could, let's say like Parker, they have this vetting process, this due diligence when they register their customers or suppliers. You know, being a US company, you actually have to look at where these companies are blacklisted, whether their finances are accurate, whether their finances are correct, etc. So having the template saying that you cannot create the customers or suppliers, which means you cannot transact with customers or suppliers that has not been vetted, that's already part of the internal compliance. The headquarter compliance, which is external, but it's headquarter, is of course met with your chart of accounts requirements and the accounting practices that you have to follow when you create your entries within SAP Business One and when you consolidate your entries. So without having this mapping of chart of accounts, you couldn't have your consolidated financial statements on monthly basis. And this is, of course, something that's required even externally if we are talking about external audits, but also Parker being a listed company, if we simply talk about transacting with a company. So these consolidated records, of course, have to be available. And without having them, you, of course, are able to comply with the external needs. And last bit, which is the local compliance, this is actually what we mentioned earlier, that we do allow the variations of the template when these are locally mandated by law. And with this in mind, again, what Justin said, having a global partner with a local knowledge who actually know the local taxation, the local rules and regulations, guiding a company like Lord, first you have the template, you look at the template, you say, okay, these are the gaps to the template, and then you mitigate the gaps. But you have to meet all, you have to meet the local compliance, the internal compliance, as well as the external global compliance. And without templates, this would be nearly impossible. I hope that together with Eddy's answer to your question.
Very good point. Very good point, Olli.
Great. I think we have another question. No, just a person saying that it makes perfect sense. So I trust you hit the point. I trust it's all. Eddy, Justin, do you want to have a couple last words before we end up this session?
Well, I think this session is beneficial to those people with a similar need that with my company that I work for. It's actually since the time I joined and with this solutions in place, our team strike a pretty good balance with be able to grow with the company with the solutions that we have and be able to progress with the architecture, with the software, as well as with building solutions. And then we just recently upgraded to version 10, and it's so far the journey is quite smooth. So I just look forward to the better future to come. So I'm sure with this solutions that we have, I think we'll be able to meet a lot of requirements required by our company. Thank you.
Yep. I guess this for me then. So I would want to actually end off by saying that two-tier is one of our what I term as best kept secrets, right, within SAP. Majority of our customers do know us for our flagship products, which is ECC and of course now S4HANA. And this two-tier piece is one of the topics that have been coming up more in recent times. I've already dealt with SAP as a SAP Business One as a product for 8 years. It's coming up more and more in recent times, and I would say do take the time to explore it. It has been beneficial for companies such as Lot. If you have a similar setup to them, I'm pretty sure when you do a deep dive, you'll be able to pull out all of these cost benefits, savings, and of course compliance benefits, right? That to help you tackle the future challenges ahead. Yeah.
Olli, one last word.
I mean, I actually would like to thank, of course, all the attendees who were seeing the three good friends having this discussion. I would like to thank Eddy of actually making himself available. I know he is super busy to attend and talk with us or introduce to us a bit more how Lord is actually managing their two-tier architecture. And of course, also Justin of sharing further details of the SAP and their strategies. And Lucille, for yourself organizing this nice webinar for us, or giving us a forum to actually have this chat to further understand the whole ecosystem, let's put it like that. So thank you everyone.